So I have a question. How many of you are familiar with the Enneagram? Or you've heard of it? Oh, several hands. Yeah, okay, all right, I like it. Okay, oh, this is exciting. All right. Well, if you're not familiar with the Enneagram, I first learned about this when I was in seminary. And at first, I thought that it was just another personality test, like Myers-Briggs or DISC assessments. And I love personality tests. I always have. Ever since I was a kid, and I would get the Teen Bop magazine or whatever, and I'd circle all the answers. And I love them, but I hate taking them because I'm always scared I'm going to answer the wrong way. That I am in that day or that season. And I always want to call someone who knows me really well and ask them which one of these answers fits me best. So that might reflect more about my personality than any of these assessments, but there we go. But I quickly realized that the Enneagram was something deeper. It doesn't just describe how we act, it reveals why we act the way we do. An Enneagram educator, Suzanne Stabile, who's based in Dallas and who I've studied under, she puts it this way. She says, unlike other personality assessments, the Enneagram helps us understand the underlying motivations that drive our behavior and gifts that we all have for transforming non-productive encounters with others. Essentially, it helps you realize maybe a principle or an ideal that you lost sight of in childhood and how you have come to another idea, and that is how you function in the world. It's about motivation. And it has its roots in ancient wisdom traditions, including the early Christian desert monks and mystics. And there are Sufi teachers who have described the 9 personality types of the Enneagram and their interconnectedness. So it's all based on this circle. And there's 9 different types, and there's numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And so you might have one that you identify with, and then when you are in a season of stress, you might go and act as another type more. If you're in a season of strength, you might go into another type more, or you might go one of those types that are on the wings of yourself. But the beauty about it is all of those types together, they say, represent the face of God. God is in all of them, and so are we. There's just certain things that come to the surface more than others. And this is an oral tradition. It's been passed down for generations and generations. So determining your type is best done in conversation, in workshops, in reflections, and not by logging onto your phone right now and Googling Enneagram test and filling something out and see what the computer or their AI system spits back at you right now. But the real gift of the Enneagram is its transformation. It invites us into deeper compassion for ourselves, for each other, an understanding about how God is working in our lives and also in our relationships. However, like any tool out there, it can also be misused. Too often, I've seen people, especially when they first learn it, use it to box people in, to explain away their behavior, to judge others or to assume we know everything about them and why they are doing what they're doing because we know what number they identify with. Or it can also be used to justify our own behaviors or to make excuses for the things that we do because, oh, I'm an 8, that's just how I am. Which I'm not an 8, but you can ask me which type I am later. I'm curious, your guess. Father Richard Rohr, also a leading teacher and spiritual director in this field, and Chris Whitman this week is starting a new spiritual conversation on Tuesday featuring Father Rohr's latest book. The information's in your bulletin, so check that out if you'd like to join. But he describes the Enneagram not as a tool for putting ourselves into a box, but for a way to understand the boxes that we've already put ourselves in. And over the years, I've used this in couples workshops and premarital counseling. Those are always really interesting conversations. And staff team building. And one of the most important lessons that I learned early on, and I always remind others, is that we never assign anyone a type. We never assign anyone a type. We let them discover their own. We let them see where they fall on that circle of God's face and embrace the fact that God holds us all no matter what type or number we are. And another way we misuse this tool is it becomes harmful when we start to pit these types against each other and when we judge each other based on their type. And that has historically, as Alvaro mentioned, been the case with the story of Mary and Martha. That good old biblical theme of sibling rivalry that we see throughout the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament, it is on full display in our gospel message today. For centuries, we have turned these two sisters into opposites. Mary, the spiritual one, the devoted student and listener of Jesus, and Martha, the busy-bodied, stressed-out host who's too worried about the details. One of them chose the better part, and one of them didn't. And for some reason, we keep doing this, especially to women. We pit them against one another. We create false choices. We act like you can either be devoted or productive, either relational or responsible. There are many books and podcasts and sermons and lessons, and I imagine that if you've spent any time in church, you've probably heard a sermon or two about Mary and Martha, right? And many of those titles, at least that we see in some circles, have to do with how to be a Mary and a Martha world. And I hate that phrase. I really do. I always want to come to Mary's defense. Not Mary's defense, Martha's defense. I want to come to Martha's defense. You're like, what, Jessica? Yeah, no. I want to come to Martha's defense. She has her hands full. She is hosting Jesus and his entourage. And we know Jesus doesn't just stroll in there, just him. He's got 70 plus people with him. And they walk into her house that she owns. And as we know, hospitality is a top priority for Jewish households. And if her sister, who also lives in the home and is supposed to be helping her and isn't, I can understand her frustration. I'm looking at my own sister who's here today and is laughing. Because even though I defend Martha, a lot of times she probably has more of the Martha role when we're hosting something together. But here's what we've missed about this story. The Greek changes everything. Jesus is not saying, Martha, stop working, stop hosting. Mary is better than you. When we get back to the Greek of it, we see two things. The word for Martha's work is diakonia, which is the same word used for ministry and service and promoting religion. Do you know what it's the root word for? Any guesses? Diakonia? Diaconate, deacon, yes, deacons. And deacons historically have been the servant leaders of the church. So what Martha is doing here is ministry, not just busy tasks. But if you've ever helped set up a worship space or an event, you know that those busy tasks are part of ministry. If you have ever cooked a meal or made sure that the live stream is working, you know exactly what Martha is doing. And then that other phrase, Mary has chosen the better part. That's a mistranslation right there. A better translation, Mary has chosen a good portion. Or Mary has chosen a just share. Jesus isn't ranking them. I'm going to say this again. He's not saying that Mary is better. When we take out that word better and instead say good portion, that completely changes the story, doesn't it? Jesus is assuring Martha that what Mary is doing is equally as important as what Martha is doing. How many of you have a sibling? Anyone have we have some people with siblings out there. Did you ever have your parents tell you, stop worrying about what your brother or your sister is doing, just focus on yourself? I wonder if that's also might be what Jesus is doing a little of here to Martha. Just focus on yourself. Mary's okay. She's where she needs to be. She's doing what she needs to do. This passage has been used to divide Mary and Martha for centuries. But what if it's not about choosing between them? What if it's also about knowing when to listen and when to act? Because if we go back to last week's story from the Gospel of Luke, right before this one, the story of the Good Samaritan, where Jesus says, don't just sit there, don't just stand there, don't just walk past this person that's been beaten up and laying in the ditch. Stop. Do something. Take action. And here we have Jesus saying, don't just do something. Stop. Sit. Take time to be present. So which is it? It's both, right? Faith and works belong together. Listening and action belong together. There are seasons in life and in ministry where we need to be a Martha. We need to make things happen. And there are seasons when we need to be a Mary. We need to stop and we need to listen. And Jesus says it's not either or, it's both and. Which brings me to this piece of art. You should have had a little handout when you walked in today. And I apologize for not having this digital piece as part of our worship bulletin because I wasn't planning on talking about it today. And the bulletins had been printed Thursday afternoon, and then we had our Thursday evening Bible study, 7 o'clock via Zoom. I hope you can join us. You can pop in any week when it fits your schedule. And we talked about this piece. And they said, you have to show this in worship. So this is by an artist, Lauren Wright Pittman. And she said that as she created this piece, I felt like I had to choose. Was I a Mary or was I a Martha? For years, I wrestled with that question, but I didn't really feel like I fit either. And then when I looked at the Greek and I saw the nuance, Martha's work is ministry, Mary's work is discipleship, and Jesus wasn't making them rivals, he was inviting them into deeper wholeness, I had to create this piece. So when you look at this, what do you notice? Not a rhetorical question, you can answer out loud if you'd like. It's circular. What else? Do people in the back have a copy of it? What else do you see? Amy? Venn diagram? Yeah. What else? Connectedness.
Boy, she's wearing yoga pants.
Yoga pants. Mary is wearing yoga pants. She's very comfortable, very relaxed. It looks like he's supporting both of them. Thank you, Leslie. Martha and Mary are both in the sphere. Their hands are within the sphere of Jesus, yeah. It is a very tiny signature at the bottom. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. The prints on their clothes. That is a great observation. So if you look, Mary's print actually represents a mustard seed and flowers and just the seed of faith that she has that God will use, that Jesus will use to blossom into something new. And then when you look at the blue, when you look at Martha, what do you see on that print? You see hands. Are those hands open or are they closed? They're open. They're open as a service to others. And when you look at Jesus, what do you see on that? Hands and the seeds and the flowers, both, yes. So if you look at, good job. We're just becoming excellent art critics here. Who knew? I did not plan to use art so close together. But if you look at this, yeah, all of those things are happening. Jesus also, one more question. What happens when you blend yellow and blue together? You get green. Notice who's green on this piece? Yeah. So you've got Jesus representing them both. You've got their different work represented. You have them crossing over. You have, I love Jesus' hands, like he's holding Martha there saying, you're right where you need to be. And he's holding Mary's he's holding Martha's elbow. And that elbow is holding these bowls that I assume represent all of her work. And he's helping hold her work up. And he's holding Mary's arm saying, you're right where you need to be. So yeah, You know, I think this piece helps frame this story and illustrate the fact that it is both and that God is in these extremes of faith and works, and that they go together. Faith and works are not a competition. Listening and action are not rivalries. Mary and Martha were never supposed to be competitors against each other. So what if we let go of that rivalry? What if instead of choosing between faith and works, we learn to hold them together like Jesus does? And we also learn that we don't hold them together just on our own. We're connected to one another. What if instead of judging others based on what we think that they should be doing, we ask ourselves, what is God calling me to in this moment? Because there is a time to act and a time to listen. Sometimes we teach, sometimes we serve, sometimes we organize, sometimes we simply show up to sit beside someone in grief, to be present, to bear witness, to stand in solidarity. The world needs activists and contemplatives. Our busy, important tasks of ministry, of justice, mean nothing if we don't take time to stop and sit and learn from Jesus, from one another. And if we only listen and we never take action, then what's the point of all of it? Both are good and right and needed. So as we continue on this Lenten journey together, of discovering God in the midst of extremes, faith and works, think about, where are you feeling called to act in your life? And where in your life do you feel called to stop and listen? And where in your life might God be asking you to let go of comparison and simply follow the divine and the divine's call for you in this moment and in this season? Amen.